I think ship life is a little bit like a river. You know, you dive in, and when you dive into ship life, quite often you're very excited and you make a big splash, and then you sail down the river for a while, and then at some point you decide to get out of the river, and the water closes up behind you. And in some ways it was like you were never there, but hopefully you've made some friends and you made a good impression on some guests, you've given them a good time, or you've made some lifelong friends. I've got friends that I've only known for 2 months on a ship that know me better than people who perhaps know me for 20 years.
If travel is your passion and you want escapism while still upholding your work and family responsibilities, you can travel vicariously from the comfort of your own home.
Hi, I'm Eddy Jenkins, and this is the Radio Vagabond.
Okay, you're about to meet a man who talks a lot. He's got a lot of words. He's a public speaker, comedian, quizmaster, magician, mind reader, DJ. Some people call him a genius dancer. I think that's debatable. He's an avid traveler and has been to 96 countries. And then I've heard people that refer to him as one of the most entertaining things to come out of Wales since Tom Jones. His name is Eddy Jenkins, but here on the cruise ship we all know him as Cruise Director Eddy.
Thank you very much. I think that was, only my mother could have written that intro, I think. There were so many compliments.
She did.
That's very nice of her. She's a lovely woman. You'd like her.
This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. Whenever you need a hotel anywhere in the world, go to Hotels25.com. That would get you the best price. Hotels25.com.
This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
So obviously, partly because of your job, you travel a lot. Is that something that you always wanted to do, or just something that came with the job working for a cruise line?
I always had the idea of traveling. When I grew up, my mum and dad in our living room at home, they had Australian artifacts from when they lived there in the 1960s. And I remember when I was about 11 years old, the teacher said, "Where does everybody want to go?" And she listed off some places, and I think the third choice was Disney. And literally 29 kids put their hand up and said they wanted to go to Disney. And I hadn't put my hand up, and they were like, "Where do you want to go?" And I was like, "I want to go to Australia." And I was the only one. Everyone else was looking at me going, "Why do you want to go to Australia?" I'm like, just because I brought up to want to travel, they told me. In fact, we had a picture on our wall of Curacao, which is where we are today, in our living room growing up, but where I would sit and have my dinner every night. There was a picture of Curacao on the wall of the different coloured houses, yeah. And so my father always got a big kick. I'd message him and say, "I'm in Curacao today," and where the houses are.
How random is that?
So bizarre, but I love travel. I love seeing new places, seeing new things. It's all the sort of cliche things about travel that I like too. It's all about meeting people, going to places, just seeing things you've only seen online or on TV, and you know, trying the local foods and the local beveraginos as well. Yeah.
So I take it you've been to Australia now.
I actually lived in Australia for a while. Yeah, I actually lived in Cairns in North Queensland. I did 2 jobs. I did stacking shelves at night time to pay the bills, and then I also did a radio show every morning on I can't remember the name, 4CR FM, I think it was called. No. Yes. I used to do breakfast every morning, and I didn't know a lot about Australian music, and some people used to question my choices of songs that I would play, but I had a lot of fun doing it. I loved living there. It was very hot, very hot. I used to play golf at that time, and I remember if I wasn't on the golf course by 6 a.m., by 8:30, I would be dying. I would literally just be red lobster, and I'd try and get to the 19th hole by about 8:45, and there's lots of pictures of me just sitting there at 8:45 in the morning drinking a beer going, "I can't take it anymore, it's too hot."
Yeah. I'm not a golfer, but I thought it was 18 holes.
Well, the 19th is the bar.
Ah. See, any golfer listening to this, they would know that. I feel so stupid now. See, Australia is one of the countries I haven't been to yet, but people tell me you don't want to go in the summer, partly because you can't really go into the ocean because of the stingrays, and then there are a lot of flies.
I think it's okay there. I think, to be honest, I don't go in the water a lot. For somebody who lives on a cruise ship, I surprisingly go in the water a very small amount. But yes, I mean, it is incredibly hot, and there are flies. But I mean, even up in Darwin, it's a fascinating place to visit, and the flies are a little bit of a something, but not. I wouldn't say if you have the chance to go, just go for it, you know. But Perth is lovely on the west coast. I was there a couple of years ago for the first time. I was over in Australia for my friend's wedding, actually. And so I flew over there. I spent some time in Sydney. Melbourne's lovely. You've got Adelaide, if you like wine as well. Adelaide is there's Barossa Valley's right back there. It's a fantastic country to visit, and it's vast, it's huge. You know, if you go to Uluru in the middle, it's unless you fly in, it's a long time to get there on the bus.
What we knew before as AS Rock,
AS
but
Rock, yeah.
you don't call it that anymore.
It's Uluru now, yeah. You can't climb up it anymore. They just stopped that, I think, about a year ago.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, I did the overnight trip up from Adelaide up there. I think I stopped off in a place called Kubapidi first, which is the place where it's so hot there. They live underground in these sort of underground houses. It's fascinating.
The Radio Vagabond. Gotta keep moving.
In the beginning, I listed some of the things that I've seen you do here on the cruise, but I take it there's so much more to your job, and also in between when we're not cruising. Can you sort of sum up what it is that a cruise director does?
Yes, it's funny. The one thing about being a cruise director is that 90% of what the cruise director job is actually behind the scenes. A lot
and 10% is what I've seen.
Yes, and so the things that I do, really, it's a lot of planning. It's basically setting things up. It's getting things organised. It's liaising with the office. So just today, even though the guests really haven't seen me yet, I've had 2 conference calls, and then we had a big meeting where we were presenting certificates for the crew who've done leadership training, and I had a meeting with my activity manager, and one of my team was in quarantine, so I had to have a chat with her. And we're planning for not only next cruise, but I just had a request for something that's going on in December. They want to know which venues they can use for it, so I have to do that. So it's a lot of paperwork. It's about 80 to 100 emails a day. And so it's just a weird part of the job that nobody ever gets to see, but it's a crucial part, because if you get that bit wrong, you know, you can't just hope that, a cruise is going to go well. Hope's not a strategy, is something we say all the time. It has to be planned, everything in advance, because I've got a team of about 80 people who really do all the work. I don't actually do that much compared to them. They do all the work, but they need to know where they have to be at what time, and that's a big part of it.
Is it only the entertainment that you're in charge of?
Basically, yes. I have about 85 people plus guest entertainers. So depending on the ship, it's 80 to 90 people. So I happen to look after broadcast and the youth facility as well, the AV, the cast members on board, the musicians, the activities team. So those are my main sort of parts of my remit.
Are you also part of choosing who's performing?
So we basically have a sort of collaborative process between people on the ship and then people in Miami as well. So quite often they will sort of try and find new talent for us to come on the ship, and then they'll say, listen, let's see what you think of this guy or lady or group or whatever it might be. And then if we want them back, we'll say, hey, this guy was amazing, or this group was fantastic. Please send them back as much as you can. And every single performer that performs, we write a report to the office to let them know how it went and what we think, or if there's any improvements, you know.
Yeah, and we're in the small theater now, but right next door, huge theater. I don't even know how many seats there are, and a big stage. I heard a rumor just today that there are replicas of the stages where they do the rehearsals. Is that just an urban legend?
So basically, we have a training facility at FIU down in Florida, and I believe, I might be wrong, maybe there's one in some country like China that's bigger, but I believe we have the largest sort of training facility or rehearsals facility space that anywhere in the world. It's basically Royal Caribbean, our sister brand, and Celebrity Cruises. We send the cast members there first, and then they do about 10 weeks to 12 weeks of training to learn all the shows before they get on the ship, so that they arrive on the ship sort of ready to go to, you know, pas de bourrée, or that's the only dance term I know, I'm sorry, but yeah, but that's what they do. And so they show up with these shows pretty much ready to go, because it takes a long time, because they're learning for this ship anyway. We have 4 different shows that they have to learn. Yeah. So it's a lot.
This wasn't about travel. I'm just so fascinated by the whole, because I come into this world and I feel I step into a village where all the locals, they live here, and they smile to us. They're so service-minded. I know when I get off the ship, I will go into a restaurant or a shop and get good service and feel it wasn't that good, because here, even the people who are maintaining the ship, they're smiling and saying good morning, and it's really amazing feeling that I'm stepping into this village.
Well, the thing is, once you've worked on a cruise ship and once you realise good service, you can never go into a restaurant anywhere in the world and not do what you're talking about, which is put it up against what we do on the ship And every server you meet, in fact, during the Pando, I was in New York for a lot of time, but I also went back to Wales, which is where I'm from. And I know that the people struggle to hire people as things were starting to open up and pubs were starting to open up. And one simple thing, I'd walk into each pub that I went for lunch or dinner and say, what's the soup of the day? And time after time after time, they wouldn't even know what soup of the day is. Now, that's not necessarily the server's fault. I think that's the manager's fault for not training them or putting a giant, great sign on the wall saying soup of the day is leek and potato, which is very popular in Wales. We love leeks. So in the end, I just started ordering soup of the day, not knowing what it was. It was like a Russian roulette of soup, just ordering it because I was like, nobody ever knows what it is. I'll just order it and let's see, because I love soup and why not,
Yeah. And now you mentioned New York, you mentioned Wales. Do you have a home base or do you just travel all the time?
I spent the Pando in New York for an entire year. I basically, they were fairly lenient in...
That was not the best choice.
What's that? New York?
New York, during the Pando?
In the beginning, it was kind of difficult there. It really was. And, the streets were quiet and all you would hear were ambulances, So, but that's where my girlfriend is. She's in the performing arts. She's a singer, dancer, actress. And so she was there and that's where I wanted to be. And I was glad to be there. And then I went home towards the end. I went home in, I think, late February, early March, something like that, for a few months. And then got the call to come back out to sea. So, when the sea starts calling you, you answer the call. And I was back here, I think, in mid-June.
Yeah, I bet it was good to be back.
It was just amazing seeing people because so many people had a difficult time. And, I think we all learned that we need to sort of check in on each other a little bit more and message each other a bit more, because sometimes when you are on ship, it does... you do get stuck in sort of like your own little bubble and your own little world, and it sort of reminds you that you need to check in on people and just see how you're doing, what's going on, everything okay, because financially and emotionally it was very difficult for people, and it was, everybody had a story, I think, about what was going on. And so as ship people, we care about each other. We don't see each other all the time. There are people I haven't seen for 10 years, but I still consider them some of my best friends.
Coming up later in this episode.
In Wales, we have a little train station called Llanfair Pwll Gwengech Gorgerich Wendrobodd Llantysilio Gogogoch. All one word.
We'll be right back.
Life is short, and there is so much to explore. I won't let a second go to waste. Yeah, time goes fast. I better step it up now. Take some chances, cut some ropes. Ooh, ain't gonna wait much longer. There will be no sleep tonight. I'll chase my dreams while I'm still young and single. Nothing's gonna stop me, no. I have to run, 'cause life is now.
So is it always on this ship, and is it always on the same routes?
I personally have done about 30 ships in my time in 14 years. I've worked for 6 different cruise lines, which I know makes it sound like I get fired a lot. But I started out as a DJ originally, and I was just lucky enough to go around different cruise lines in the intervening years. And then when I joined Celebrity, I always say, send me wherever you need me. So I've done pretty much all the ships in the fleet. We've got one fancy new one, which I haven't done yet. And also there's one called the Constellation. But apart from that, every single ship in the fleet. And some of the ships we don't even have anymore. We have one called the Mercury or the Galaxy and the Century, that people who cruise a lot might know those names. But I'll pretty much go wherever they need me.
Yeah. And I know that you're mostly busy on the sea days when we're not in port like we are today. But you also mentioned that you had to do a lot of work today. So do you get a chance to go out and explore when we get to places?
Well, as a crew member, there's 2 things you want to know. You want to know, is it a sea day, is it a port day? Because we don't care what day of the week it is. There's no such thing as a Saturday night for a crew member.
I don't even know what day it is today.
And so when you're a crew member, you're just thinking, is it a sea day? If it's a sea day, we're working all day. And if it's a port day, which port is it? Is it when we want to go off? Do we want to go to the beach? Do we want to go shopping, pick up, snacks and supplies? Is it a port where we're going to do laundry? Because, everything that happens in life happens on a ship. And some days it's got to be laundry day, So I try and get out whenever I can. But I know some ports better than others. Some I'm thinking, oh, I really want to go to that restaurant that I always go to rather than go to a museum. Or if I've, I can think of ports in my head, like in Civitavecchia, I'm always going to the same pizza place. In Cozumel, I'm always going to the same Mexican restaurants that I know there. If I'm in Sweden, I want to go for some fika, which is when they have like coffee and pastries and things like that. So different places around the world, when I've been to them many times, you try different things, but you sometimes come back to your favourites. Well, relating it to cruising, one of the things that's great about cruising when you're cruising in somewhere around like Europe is that you can see so much in a short space of time. You can literally go to sleep in Spain and then you wake up in France. You go to sleep in France, you wake up in Greece, etc. Now, the funny thing is that sometimes the best thing to see off a ship is actually not some sort of obelisk, or it's not necessarily the Eiffel Tower, it's not necessarily a beach. One of the best days you can ever have in your life is if you ever take a cruise or you go and visit Ireland. And, Ireland doesn't have the Eiffel Tower. It doesn't have Uluru. It doesn't have lots of old Roman ruins or Mayan ruins. What Ireland has, for example, is the people. That you can have some of the best days of your life just sitting in pubs in Ireland. Even if you don't drink, you could just sit in the pub. And Irish people are so interesting and interested in other people. And they are so welcoming and so friendly. And I can honestly recommend to you, if you haven't done it, I'm not sure if it's one of the 96 you've already, or 97 now, is it?
97.
97, there you go.
Just for the listeners, when we came on the ship, I'd been to 95, and you were ahead of me, and now I'm one.
You are. You're ahead of me. It's incredible.
You'll get to 97 at some point.
I hope so. So honestly, some of the best days you can have in Ireland are just sitting in a bar, sitting in a pub, just getting to know the locals, and that's. I always tell people that's the best way to spend a day in Ireland.
I tell you, actually, when I was in Dublin, I've only been to Dublin, so I need to go back. But when I was in Dublin, it was with a group of friends, and we bought one of those hop-on, hop-off bus tours.
Yeah.
And we got on the bus, did one stop, and saw a bar, and said, "Let's just get off here. We go back and go." And we just did that one stop.
There's a couple of good books. There's one about a guy who takes a fridge. I forget the name of that one, where he basically takes a fridge around Ireland. And there's another one where there's a guy that hires an old Volvo and drives around Ireland. I think it's called McCarthy's Bar. And it's a fascinating book. And his name is McCarthy. So he says, I'm going to go around every pub called McCarthy's Bar in Ireland. And it's a fascinating book. And it just gives you a sense of what Ireland is all about. I recommend it if you haven't. And I think the first night he goes on this tour of his. He's got this battered old Volvo. And the first pub he goes to, it's the landlady's birthday. And like pretty much all drinks are free. And it's like the greatest night of his life. And that was just like one of this book. It's a terrific book. It's called McCarthy's Bar.
Yeah. Another country in the UK that I haven't been to is your home country, and is it tomorrow that you're doing a talk about Wales, your home country?
Yeah, so a lot of people, when I'm on the cruise ship or around the world, they think that Wales is a part of England, and I have to sort of say, no, Wales, we've got a flag, we've got a country, we've got a national anthem. Yeah. It's a wonderful place to visit, and people ask me a lot of questions, so I do a talk called 10 Things You Didn't Know About Wales. But then people sometimes show up thinking it's about Herman Melville and Moby Dick and the sea. And so the talk is actually called 10 Things You Didn't Know About Wales, not Wales. Yeah. But only the spelling makes it work.
But it's really one of the countries I so want to go to, even though once you've been to one of the countries in the UK, it counts as a UN nation. So it's right. And that's what I'm counting. It's UN nations. But I still want to go, and I want to do more in Scotland as well. But what is it that makes Wales? I know that I'm going to hear the talk, but I haven't heard it yet. So Can you tell me why should I go to Wales?
It's a beautiful country. Now, it's very green. It actually gets more rain than Ireland, which is, of course, known as the Emerald Isle. We have more rain, and it's green. It's beautiful. It's green because it rains a lot sometimes, but it's beautiful. If you're in the north part of Wales, we have Snowdon. It's our biggest mountain that we have in Wales. The mid part of Wales, it's very rural. It's the coastline. We have hundreds of miles of beautiful coastline. There are some beautiful beaches when the sun shines. Places like Rossili are gorgeous. You've got Tenby down southwest Wales, and then you've got the Gower Peninsula, which is near Swansea. Just a beautiful part of the country. That's sort of if you're a Dylan Thomas fan, that would be the spot. That's where he wrote some of his most famous works, like Under Milk Wood, etc. And we have some great. We care about singing. Obviously, Welsh people love singing and rugby and things like that. So if you're a fan of singers like Tom Jones or Shirley Bassey or Charlotte Church or Bryn Terfel, if you like more classical type stuff.
I knew the first two.
Ah, there you go. So some of our exports aren't so famous. Quite often people say after my talk, why didn't you talk about Sean Connery? But quite often people will say, I would have liked it more if you talked more about Sean Connery. And I would have liked it more if he was Welsh. But but there we are. But yes, so you might have heard of Richard Burton, great actor, Anthony Hopkins, Michael Sheen. And so I it's some fun things about Wales. And people always want me to say that very long place name in Wales. In the North Wales, we have it's not the longest. I think there's a place in New Zealand that's longer. But in Wales, we have a little train station called Llanfair Pwll Gwengech Gorgerech Wendrobodd Llantysilio Gogogoch. All one word, a little train station. There's not much there, a few houses and a train station, but it's a great place to get a photo. You'll have to do that on your travels when you get there.
Yeah, and I won't even try to repeat it now, but I'll practice so I can do it when I get there. But now, Wales is really on my bucket list. What's on your bucket list, some of the places you haven't been to yet?
I've done quite a lot of the world. I've been to Antarctica. I've been to the Arctic Circle as well. I've never been to Machu Picchu. That would be a big one. There are some other countries in Asia that I haven't seen. There are some great countries in Europe I've never gotten to because they're landlocked or for whatever reason I just haven't gotten off there.
And cruise ships don't go there.
Unfortunately, yes. Trying to get to somewhere like Switzerland is not always easy on a cruise ship. But I've been very lucky to see the places I have that you can go to on a ship. Like I've been to China, I've been to South Korea. I mentioned New Zealand. I lived in New Zealand, but it's a great place to see on a cruise ship as well because a lot of what you want to see is around the outside of New Zealand. Have you been there yet?
No. Australia and New Zealand is really high as well.
See, that's one. A lot of people say they wish they'd spent more time in New Zealand, so make sure you leave ample time to get to know New Zealand.
I'm going to push it to the limit of what the visa will let me.
It's a great place. But I've been to, I think, 42 of the 48 contiguous states in the United States of America. So there's still some
Me
places.
too.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, but in a few weeks I've done 48.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I'm at 42 as well.
So, and I've been to Alaska and I've been to Hawaii as well. So I'd like to get to all 50. I've done some road trips. I did a road trip a few years ago from San Diego to Miami, going to Chicago and South Dakota and Tennessee and the Carolinas. Not in that order. That would be a terrible road trip. But it did make sense at the time. And I got to stay with lots of friends and crew members and actually guests that I met on ships, actually. That's one of the great things about ships. People say, oh, come and stay with us next time you're in, Boise, Idaho or something. And then you're like, okay, I'm coming through.
Yeah, and in a few days, when we get to Florida, I'm going to head up to New York. So I'll say hi to your girlfriend if I see her.
Well, she'll be down here. She's actually coming next cruise. Yeah, so she'll be here when you're up there. Yeah. But it's a fascinating city. One of the things that was good during the Pando was that the streets were so quiet. So I would just walk up and down Manhattan. I would just bike up and down Manhattan. They have these city bike things that you can just rent for half an hour at a time. Yeah. And actually one of the things to be a bit useful during the Pando, not that, I'm not exactly a frontline worker, but to help out a little bit, was that they had this program where you could move the bikes around the city from where there's not enough bikes to where there's more bikes. So I'd used to do that on certain days when I had nothing to do and it was decent weather. I would just move the bikes around the city to help them out.
Yeah, and free exercise.
And it was exercise, and I need that because the food is, by reputation, you'll know the food on cruise ships is incredible.
So are you going to be cruising far into the future or any other plans for you?
I honestly don't know, to be honest.
This is a job interview. Where are you in 5 years?
Yes. The thing is, even if you, after 2 years of being on ships, if you said, will you still be on ships in 5 years? I'd have said, absolutely no way. There's just no way. But it's a difficult job to walk away from because it's just so much fun. I missed it while the Pando was on, and I missed sort of hanging out with my friends and seeing the world. And I'm very pale for somebody who lives on a cruise ship, so which is the awkward thing. People just can't understand why I'm so pale. But it's quite an addictive job, I think, sometimes. There's a bar in Mexico that sells a T-shirt specifically for crew members, and it just says on it, I swear this is my last contract. Because quite often people will say, oh, that's it, I'm done now, 5 years, I'm good, I'm going to go on land. And then all of a sudden, 5 months later, they're seeing all their friends posting from Sydney, Australia, or they're posting from, they could be in Norway, or they could be in sailing through the Panama Canal, and they go, oh, maybe I'll just go do one more contract. One more.
Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in.
Exactly, yeah. And sometimes you'll get an email from someone saying, yep, I'm going back, I'm going to do another one. Which ship are you going to be on? And I think ship life is a little bit like a sort of a river. You dive in, and when you dive into ship life, quite often you're very excited and you make a big splash, and then you sail down the river for a while, and then at some point you decide to get out of the river, and the water closes up behind you. And in some ways it was like you were never there, but hopefully you've made some friends and you made a good impression on some guests, you've given them a good time, or you've made some lifelong friends. I've got friends that I've only known for 2 months on a ship that know me better than people who perhaps know me for 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's the incredible thing. I mean, hopefully you felt that way about the crew whilst you've been on board.
Totally.
I mean, we are a family.
Yeah.
Because we spend, you spend, morning, noon and night. You can never get away from each other, Yeah. We live here for 6 months at a time.
Exactly, and that's what I meant by stepping into your village. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of your village for a few days, and I will be back.
I hope you've had a good time with us on the cruise. I hope you come and cruise with us again sometime.
It's in my blood now. I need to cruise some more.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
My name is Palabo, and I gotta keep moving. See ya.
Produced by RadioGuru.co.uk.